are the single most important form of digital content on the internet. The number one. How many people believe that? Show of hands. Not many, not many. Come on, think about it. Music, video, already been done. Today, no consumer device can successfully launch without a quality game strategy. No app store this side of Apple can exist without having a viable game strategy. Games are the single most important form of content available on the internet today. But as an industry, we do not act like we believe that games are an important form of content. And because of that, we cost ourselves billions of dollars. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we've gotten into that place, and specifically in the area of advertising, why it's costing us money, and what we can do about it. First, why? As an industry, we spent a lot of time chasing whales. Started in the casual space with an awareness of whales, heightened to an art form in the social space, and as we move mobile, more and more and more focus on the whales, yet we all know that whale hunting, the whales are less than 1% of the audience and diminishing over time. But our games are ever more popular. We have millions and millions of adoring fans for our games, and they are the 99%. Advertisers care about reaching a broad audience. They care about the 99%, but we've been paying attention to the 1%. Accordingly, advertising has become the red-headed stepchild of the games industry. What does this cost us? Well, in the United States this year, advertising on television surpassed $70 billion for the first time. $70 billion. Yet TV audiences are stagnant or declining. The people watching TV, the audience is aging, and the advertisers want to be reaching growth audience, younger audience. Those people are spending their time with games. Now, to understand how badly we've missed the mark, we need to understand one thing about advertising, which is there's two major branches. There's brand advertising, and there's direct response advertising. Now, on television, well over 80% of the dollars are spent on brand advertising. Brand advertising is not just the fact that it's a recognizable brand doing the advertisement. Brand advertising is a form of advertising where the advertiser is trying to have a conversation with an audience that's paying attention, and they're trying to make them aware of their brand or their products, but they're doing it with a full knowledge that you're not going to run out and conduct a transaction immediately. They want an ongoing conversation with a large audience over a span of time. Probably the world's best, or one of the best brand advertisers is Apple. Go back to their iconic advertising campaigns, anti-IBM in the 1980s, through their Think Different advertising campaign for decades, and to more current incarnations like this iPod advertising campaign. What they're doing is they're creating an image for themselves and their products because they want their potential customers to have a positive association, and when they get to the point of transaction, they are more inclined to buy. That's brand advertising. The other kind of advertising, direct response, is the equivalent of the carnival barker, which is they're trying to do a transaction now, shouting at you, pulling you out of the game, go do a transaction with me. As an industry, we've spent all of our energy with the carnival barkers, and we've spent virtually none of our energy with the brand advertisers. This is such a problem that the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, commissioned a study from Bain & Company in search of what's wrong with the internet. Why can't we get some of that $70 billion that's stuck in television to flow over into the internet? This study is a couple years back, but it's more relevant today. One of the key graphics from that study is they asked brand marketers, what do you need to conduct a brand campaign? And brand marketers said, hey, we need engagement, emotional response, high impact creatives, right? Audience attention and interaction. And what gets the black circle? Fully they believe that television, come on, with this 4-minute and 30-second commercial pod where everybody gets up and either runs to the kitchen or the restroom or grabs an iPad and starts playing a game during that spot, that's what is the highest mark in the industry. What they said is the internet gets the red quarter because it's full of clutter, it's full of bad creative, bad, carnival barkers, right? What's the problem? The problem is they're judging the internet by things like newspapers and stuff like that. They aren't even thinking about the games industry as a viable form of advertising on the internet. Yet we all know the absolute most engaging form of content available with full audience attention, lean forward interaction is games. Brand advertisers have totally looked past this because we haven't, as an industry, stood up and gotten recognized as a viable medium for running brand advertising. Why is that? I go back to our whale hunting days. As I already alluded to the fact, when social came around, we had the technology to measure transactions, and because we can, the analytical side of our brain started, the right brain folks said, hey, because you can't do a transaction, let's really raise that to an art form. And so even while we're focusing on whales, when the whales couldn't whip out with a credit card because they're too young, we started going to offer walls and way down in the purchase funnel, started jamming advertising in there as a way to supplement a weakness in conversion. Still a 1% thinking towards advertising. Have it patch what's wrong with the conversion rates of whales in my game. Now as we get into mobile, the advertising is being used because app stores are a god-awful form of distribution. So we take our VC dollars, hand them to another game company to do a CPI ad to get our product installed. They take that money, hand it to the next game company to get a CPI ad to get our game installed. And we're using advertising as a patch for inefficiencies in distribution. Now, I'm not saying those aren't valid forms of advertising. There'll always be a place for direct response. But it's the small dollars. It's the big dollars are in brand advertising. And as an industry, it's time that we started paying attention to that because we're coming to a crossroads. Advertisers have problems. They're looking for brand advertising vehicles, but it's getting harder and harder to find them. And as the internet marches on, we're making it the proliferation of devices. It used to be just how do I get to a PC? Now it's how do I get to a PC, a phone, and a tablet? Because as this graph shows, consumers are spending their time on these multitude of devices throughout the day. And the advertiser wants to be able to reach the consumer, get their attention at various points in the day. So it's proliferating, it's getting harder and harder, and we as an industry have done nothing to make it easier for the advertiser. And so they're starting to bite back. This article came out in May, where GM, right in the smack dab in the center of Facebook's IPO, pulled their advertising off of Facebook. If you read the article, they said basically we couldn't prove any brand ROI on our ads on Facebook. A lot of people came to Facebook's defense through all of that, but really the fundamental issue is they couldn't see any proof that their brand advertising was effective on Facebook. Yet for those of you folks who know Wild Tangent, we've been advertising on the Facebook canvas for a number of years now, and when we run our ad campaigns with them, we get 200 times, not 20, 200 times the measurable click-through rates on the ads the brand advertising campaigns that we run in front of social games. Now, you can say, wait a minute. You know, you're comparing a postage stamp size ad in the upper corner of a Facebook page, that click-through rate, to a rich media ad right in front of you inside of a game where somebody's paying attention. That's apples and oranges. Exactly right. Exactly the point. Games are the single most strategic form of content available on the internet. Because of the properties of games, we have a competitive advantage over every other form of content, and we are made for brand advertising, and we're squandering it. Not just social, same thing in mobile. Mary Meeker works for Kleiner Perkins, partner at Kleiner Perkins. They put out presentations on internet trends, closely watched. I know because after she speaks, I have 5 different people forward me her deck within 30 minutes. And the most recent one in June, she talked about, hey, there's mobile is here, of course. And what she really pointed to is the low monetization of mobile. And she said, hey, but we're going to be saved. We're going to be saved by advertising. What this graph shows is for the amount of time people spend on mobile, there's a 10-fold gap in the amount of advertising revenue that accrues there. So, hey, there's a $20 billion opportunity with advertising on mobile. Within days of her presentation, The Guardian in the UK published an article says, you know what, that's a mirage. $20 billion, that's a mirage. If the industry hasn't cracked the mobile advertising code after 5 years of energetic and skillful work, it's because there is no code to crack. When you go look at the article, dive into it, what was the gentleman doing? He was comparing newspapers that had a larger format on a PC screen. He said, how can we shrink it down and still have banners and buttons be effective on these tiny screens? Again, absolutely paying no attention whatsoever to games. So hopefully by now you understand that there's a multi-billion-dollar problem that we can help to fix. But you say, how can I take actions to move these billions of dollars? Well, I ask you folks to, as developers, think globally, act locally. We control the future of the internet in our hands. I've got 3 simple rules of what we can do to start getting on the right track. Rule number 1, teach your game developers, designers, the simple difference between brand advertising and direct response. We've got a decade of bad habits that we have to break. We've got creative types who think that advertising is bad, and it is not. Brand advertising is the good stuff. It's the quality stuff. It's the stuff that you want associated with your games. And you need to teach your people the difference. I cannot tell you the number of times, probably 80% of the time I'm having a conversation with a game developer, and they have no clue the difference between brand advertising and direct response, 80 or higher percent. Let's fix that. 2, this is an easy one actually. Understand that brand advertising campaigns are much larger than an individual game. As you saw from the earlier stats, what the brand advertiser is doing is they're starting, at least where we're at now, they're starting their brand campaigns on television. They're creating their assets for those campaigns with TV in mind, and they want to flow those across the internet in the most efficient way possible. That's actually good news for us, because what it really means, you boil it down to, is inside of your games, you need to make room for the 30-second TV spot. You need to do it in a non-interruptive way that's you control, so you control the frequency so it doesn't damage any of the conversion stats of your game, but design it into your game. Easy stuff. 3 is the hard one, and that is, again, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had about brand advertising and talking to the game developer. They say, Mike, you make great points, but you know what? We're going to go chase the whales. We're going to go whale hunting. If we fail, we'll slap a couple ads on afterwards. And of course, number 1, poor design, poor ad execution, you're going to get poor results. And number 2, we're too busy, we never get around to it. So again, as an industry, what we need to do is make advertising a first-class citizen. Think about when you talk, change even the nomenclature. You talk in-app purchase, IAP, we're going to have to purchase. No, you're going, what you want is a value exchange, whether it's from the consumer or the advertiser, for in-app value. If you think that way, what you will do is you will create games that can monetize as high or higher on advertising than they do via the consumer. So, the future of the world is in your hands. You have great responsibility. We have the most important content, the strategically most valuable content on the internet today. We need to act like it. 2, we need to design our games to accommodate advertising as a first-class citizen. Thank you.